Yes, sure will. So we'll begin with the providers. Chair Kevin Marone.
Here.
Can't hear. Vice Chair April Lott. Steve.
She said here.
I
Did
see her.
she?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't hear her. Steve. Andy.
Here.
Lariana. Erica.
Here.
Thank you. Lieutenant Zach.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Christine.
Christine Long is not able to be here. I'm James Dunbar. I'm a proxy listening in, taking notes for her.
Okay. And then we have Ashley. Ashley Lowry. Dolores.
Here.
Thank you. Mickey. And Judith.
Here.
Okay, and now did you want to do,
Where does that leave us with the providers? What
we have 9.
9 and quorum. So that means
Is
quorum,
7.
right?
Yes. Okay. So now we'll move to funders. Chair Kathleen. She's not on yet.
No.
Okay. Arrow. Vice Chair Arrow.
This is Shira Green. I'm filling in for Arrow.
Thank you. Janine.
She's going to be delayed.
Okay. Celeste.
Present.
Amy.
Here.
Blossom. Blossom's not going to be here. Elise. Danya.
Danya's here.
Yes. Joe. Riddle. Julie Rocco. Elizabeth. And Karen.
I'm here.
So right now we only have 5 for the funders.
5. Were there any other alternates that are here for anyone who's missing?
December 5th to perform a audience.
Hi, it's Elise. Did you capture my name?
If the cabinet's on the upgrade, if they're doing a good job, we'll let them.
Yeah, I think Elise jumped on after you called her name. So
Yeah, I didn't get the unmute button off quick enough.
Okay,
Thanks,
I got you now.
Kevin.
Thank you. That's 6.
and what is quorum?
It's going to be 7.
Let me see if I can reach out to Joe.
We have Yvonne here for Blossom.
Good. Okay.
Yvonne
I'm not sure
Morales.
though if she has
Okay.
me as an alternate for her. So
So I will say we have, because of the transition, what we've noticed is that if we were given notice from Blossom that she wasn't going to be here, and
Right.
if, but as far as like a specific alternate, that has not been identified. So I will trust, I know we don't have Kathleen here yet. I would trust Kevin. April, do you have any thoughts on that, or anyone from funders? Karen?
Sorry to interrupt. Dana is here.
Yeah, we had, I think we had her down, right?
Okay.
Alicia?
Dania.
Danya
Mhm.
Press?
Apologies, Danya.
Yes, Danya. Thank you.
Yes, I got her.
Awesome.
Yes.
Uh,
So for the funders, with Yvonne, we have 7.
If Yvonne can represent the VA, then Kevin, are you talking? I'm so, I think you're muted. Almost starting to be able to.
How about now?
That, yes, the closer you get, the better it is.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Joint Funders and Providers Council meeting, Friday, October 17th. We have a lot of items on the agenda to discuss. We've already gone through our roll call and confirmed quorum. So we'll move forward to our first action item, which is the consent agenda. We have attached the 8:15 Joint Funders Council, Provider Council meeting summary and the minutes in attendance. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 And who was the second?
Second was
Zach.
Zach.
Thank you.
Would you prefer it be through the verbal or through the like button or whatever, the thumbs
Oh,
up button?
I think if since I just welcome Alicia, she's new to the HLA and she'll be getting to know everyone's names and faces very soon. But when making emotions, if you'll just say your name right after, then we'll be able to get her up to speed quicker.
Okay, well, that's a lot of names. Uh, s-
Oh, just for motions. Just for motions.
oh, okay, I got it.
Yes, that's it. That's
I
it.
thought you meant for the action.
No.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, consent agenda approved. Moving on to our next item, which will be the bulk of our meeting, the federal policy alignment discussions. We wanted to focus a lot of today's meeting on anticipated shifts and changes and have some hopefully robust discussions regarding how we are to prepare and align ourselves with these changes. Sherry, did you want to lead it from here?
Yeah, sure. So I know a packet was sent out, so hopefully everyone was able to review that. There were references and resource materials given at the very end, some links that I think would be really, if you haven't had a chance to review that material, I think that'd be very important to do so. This is information has been collected from other COCs, from uh, funders, providers, information I found and pulled together. And so I think it's there's some alarming things or different, a lot of changes that are happening at the federal level. And so we want to make sure that everyone is really aligned when it comes to contract language, and also what gets put forward to the COC to be considered, because a lot of practices and approaches and policies that we've had in the past may need to be absolutely need to be reviewed. And so if we could get that Word doc up real quick. But before we get into it, so the main areas that we're going to be reviewing is housing first, some changes coming down there. If you pay attention to the news and have been reading executive orders and staying on top of what is happening with HUD and the government shutdown, then none of this is going to be really a surprise. But housing first, more focus on treatment services and as precondition for housing. HMIS data standards were just released recently, and so there's been a lot of training around that. And one of the big changes there has been removing gender, which can remain an option for the COC to continue to collect that information. But I think we're going to need to discuss some of the implications of that and maybe unintended consequences. But gender was replaced in favor of sex only, and the sex is binary choice, male, female, and a few other options there, but there's not like an other or transgender that's being removed. It's prefer not to answer or did not know. And we've discussed that in the DSP committee as well. This is very recent changes, so this is subject to change at any moment too, of course. We all know that. Things have been kind of happening at a rapid pace. Discussing DEI, that has been a topic of discussion during COC board meetings, and there's been a lot of robust debate around that. But we know providers, of course, that has been, especially if you've had state contracts for a while, that has been not allowable in our contracts. And so that's also starting to shape up with HUD as well in the federal contracts. There's harm reduction practices that need to be reviewed and immigration verification, which is still kind of up in the air. There's not a lot of guidance around it, as well as data privacy and cross-systems information sharing, especially with law enforcement. And that was just from an executive order. It's not set in stone yet. I don't know what that's going to look like, but some things to keep in mind. And so, but before we get into that, there was a recent news that came down and it's on the agenda, the recent news that came down around permanent supportive housing. And I know we've talked about that a lot in this group, as well as the board and everywhere. Every single meeting I'm in, we're talking about permanent supportive housing and some of the threats from the federal level around that. And want to say that recently there was some very reliable information, some sources, especially the NAEH, National Association National Alliance to End Homelessness, has put out some information, as well as the Florida Coalition, around talk at the federal level to reduce permanent supportive housing to 30% of what currently gets funded at this time. And so I wanted to just kind of hand it over. I know, Kevin, you have a lot to say about that. You were able to supply some information around the possibility of 700 folks being impacted if that was to be the case. And so I know Arrow, who could not be with us, was also curious about what we may be able to do and discuss as far as mitigation strategies.
I mean, before we dive into that, I feel like we brushed through all those other items.
We're going to go thoroughly.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a brief overview.
Yeah, I really wanted to hear from, you know, Amy and Karen, and as far as local contracts, where they are at currently as it relates to some of these shifts and changes.
And we'll be going one by one, and we can save that conversation, because that was the plan, to go through here and make sure that we get aligned on the language so that there's not a lot of variance between funders. We can go one by one.
So should we start with housing first?
Let's start with housing first. So with housing first, we know it is being rejected by current federal policy, the executive order that came out, and also the most recent COC builds NOFO was very explicit in requiring treatment and services as a precondition to housing. So that was that let us know that we can expect that in future NOFOs and funding. In the third column is basically a draft of what is being recommended. And so if we can talk about that, and If you want to add anything to that or debate any of it, have any issues with it, now would be the time.
So Sherry, where are these so the recommended language, is that coming from the COC or is that coming from the other entities you spoke about, the National Alliance and Florida Coalition?
These are ideas that in response that there is no one's helping shape the language on this other than this is what the HLA has recommended or
Okay.
and recommended is a strong word, but these are ideas. These are options to consider to get the discussion going. Whatever happens here later on, because some of this is newer, then these all this input's going to be given to the COC board as well for more discussion so they can improve maybe some policy shifts.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say for the county, I think we were waiting for this discussion, some policy language or recommendations. To date, our board has not repealed the resolution for Housing First. There is no action that we've been asked to bring all contracts forward to change that language. For us, I would say we would be doing it as the agreements come up. We would be infusing the recommended language. Like I said, there hasn't been a discussion about repealing that resolution yet.
Well,
So I would say, go ahead.
I was just going to chime in and say, I think we're kind of in the same place. I know Helen's contracts refer to housing kind of focused. Avery's been exploring other language. It certainly got flagged in some of the Doge conversations, but we haven't taken an official stance on anything, and it'll be upcoming contracts where those changes get made. If Helen has anything to add, I'd ask her to jump in.
So I pretty much echo what Karen and Amy said, and just know that all of our agreements that have gone out, social action funding, they say housing focused. So I changed housing first to housing focused. And that I tried to wipe everything out that said housing first and or DEI as we keep going further, and really just made change that word to focus, because I don't think that brought up any alarms. And then I think Amy already spoke to, we haven't changed anything as far as our resolution, haven't even had the conversation that I'm aware of.
So can whoever's taking notes, will you write in housing focused in that? Thank you.
I think
So
directive once the NOFO is released, but I think this is at least just an early conversation of to outline any ideas or concerns as we move towards that.
this is Judith. I apologize. I'm trying to figure out where the raise your hand function is on this, and I'm not used to using this platform. I want to say a couple things, and I don't know if it'll back into any notes, but of course, as you know, St. Vincent de Paul Cares is very rigorous on the housing first approach. Our outcomes by way of recidivism rate are stellar. Could there be, or should we contemplate a bit of a misunderstanding nationally around housing first in this aspect, that we are not housing and then walking away? We have an intense wrap of case management services. So I wonder with the language that you put forth, with which I like, rapid access to safe, stable housing, with I don't know if we say rigorous, or I don't want anyone to walk away with the impression that it's just like once a month we see them, because that's not the case. We're getting them engaged in vocational services and ways to get income and rapid supports.
Well, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about housing first with the administration. I mean, that's very clear. I think we all know here locally the the success that we've had as it relates to this. I don't know we're going to have a lot of success at this stage.
Yeah, understood.
Changing changing that. We just have to figure out how to be able to continue to do what we do to serve people in the best way we can with whatever necessary language changes we need to make.
Yeah. So with that, I would just only suggest that we get stronger language around service engagement and individualized recovery.
Yeah.
That it's quick and intense.
The one, and April has chimed in here too. The rule change is saying we must require treatment to reduce chronic homelessness. And I would add to that that in some of the NOFOs in the grant, the funding that's been coming down, the applications or the notices, they are saying require treatment and supportive services as a precondition for housing assistance. That's exact language.
Yeah, I mean that word's going to be a challenge, simply because you can't require anyone, you can't force treatment on anyone. It goes against all kinds of uh, rights. But what I've always said, before the term housing first was ever even coined, is that housing is included with the housing. Like it's a part of the housing. It comes with the housing. To me, that gets around this whole notion of requiring, because it's just included, and one person may use it more than another, but it's always available to them. And if they're not interested in it today, we'll try again tomorrow. And I think the sort of engagement piece is where you would focus that on, because that is essentially what we do. We do it even in street outreach, where we continuously go back, talk to people, develop rapport, develop a trusting relationship with them, until you can progress and move them towards a better place. To me, that is, if you want to call it required treatment, we do that as a community. We care about people, and we continuously engage them into helping them, move forward into stability.
Oh, sorry, I have a question. I was looking for my hand, but I couldn't find it. So are they saying that the regulations are they saying that the regulations changing, or is this an executive order?
In
What is?
between. So there isn't a regulation so much as the SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, and HUD have put down. SAMHSA's put out their own guidance that covers a lot of this as well, and is in the reference material. HUD put out a COC build NOFO that used that specific language. That was the question. Do you require treatment and supportive services as a precondition for housing? And if you respond negatively, then you were out. You didn't
So are
get.
they saying that for the COC to receive federal funding, that it's a requirement to, before a homeless person is housed or go through the process of being housed, they need to be provided treatment? Is that what they're saying?
It's just a precondition.
Okay.
So I don't know how to read that other than something like saying rapid access to safe, stable housing with recovery and service engagement instead of saying um, instead of and I think just reframing the language is going to help out a lot.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's what permanent supportive
Just
housing is. It's services with the housing. I mean, otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
so one thing we do. So here's how it works out in practical terms. We have the housing first checklist or questionnaire that I know a lot of people use, and in the COC, and so that would be something to discuss not requiring when doing monitoring or performance evaluations and things of that nature.
Or can we reframe it? Call it something else.
'Cause I'm just curious. I'm curious what would happen. Let's say you got the grant. I'm curious to what happens when it's time for monitoring, right? For compliance. So you write the grant, then it's time for compliance, and they want the data, they want the information of the services the client provided, they want to see the file. So it's like, I guess I'm a little lost of what it is that they're looking for, or because that's going to determine how the case managers are going to be working on the files with the clients and then how it's going to be built. Do you guys see what I'm saying? Hello?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Oh.
I'm wondering if anyone else is.
Because it's like, okay, we write the grant, we get approved, and now we have to submit for draw requests. We have to submit, let's say they want to do monitoring, they want to see our cases. And let's say we had a client that he was housed, but he refused services for
Right.
whatever, I don't know, whatever reason. Well, what will that mean? Does that mean we're now not in compliance?
I'm going to say yes. But again, no, I'm not I imagine this is going to be coming out in the contracts if they're in the grant notices.
I'm going to reframe that and say he refused them today, but we're going back tomorrow.
There's that too.
This isn't sort of engagement. This is a long-term approach. What I think is not wanted to be seen is that we hand over a set of keys and walk away, and that's the end of it. And the reality is that isn't the work of this. This is very hard work. And keeping people housed is a lot of work. And I would hate for these policy changes to forget the fact that there is a significant number of interventions that are going on in this work. All summed down to a term of housing first. And
No, I get what you're saying, but I don't think they get what you're saying. You know what I mean? Is there like attorneys or someone that we could speak with to have, I don't know, like, does anybody maybe, because it matters, right? If we're going to be writing a grant and then depending on our agreement, what if they turn around and they want our agreement states that we have to do certain things and it's not the reality of how business is done?
Michael has a question or has his hand up, and then Judith. Michael?
Yeah, I thought Judith had her hand up first.
Okay, sorry. I didn't see the order. Go ahead, Judith.
Michael had his hand up first.
No, I'm just all I would say to her point is I think the other question of it is because I think we can figure out how to write it into a grant or use language differently. But if someone is in housing and a requirement is that they're in treatment and then they get into housing but refuse treatment, are we supposed to kick them out? Right? I mean, I think that's where we're going to get into the harder part of it because then they would no longer qualify for the housing services if they're not in some sort of treatment because there's not a way to do treatment first. It would be in a way where we would have to do it simultaneously. And that goes to your point, Kevin, which is we're doing that simultaneously in permanent supportive, but what if someone is in housing and then refuses treatment? Then they're not going to be eligible anymore for housing services. I mean, isn't that kind of the point that we're trying to talk about?
Well, I mean, depending on the housing that you're talking about, if you're talking about permanent housing, then you're now on a legal issue, and I do not believe that you could get through the courts and evict someone for not participating in treatment. That's not gonna that's not even going to fly.
Okay, well, when we start dealing with it,
Yeah. Judith, did that cover what you were going to say?
No, I just want to throw this out. Like, what if they don't need treatment? Like, who's going to determine? I mean, who's going to determine if they need treatment? And then what if they don't need
what if
it?
they have an assessment, the assessment concludes that they don't need treatment? Will
Right.
assessment result satisfy the requirement that we've,
Well, I mean, treatment hasn't even been defined. You have to first define treatment.
Yeah.
What
And
this,
supportive
Understood.
services.
yeah,
Supportive
because treatment
services, so
is
case
a,
management, workforce
yeah,
development.
yeah.
Yeah.
This treatment is a strong word. So
Yeah.
services is a easier word to use in this conversation.
Cindy has something that she wants.
So I'm just looking at the chat. So David Conley says precondition defined, a condition that must be fulfilled before other things can happen or be done. April says, yes, I understand what you are saying. Can local funders using federal funds do what Kevin is saying? And then April says, providers are reimbursed. Will providers be at risk of not being reimbursed for services provided? For example, DFL does not require mental health or substance abuse services to be eligible for rapid rehousing.
And what I would say to this, like, so that is the concern. That's the, and getting prepared for funding that comes down the road, that ultimately the contracts that funders are providing throughout the COC, we're not going to know until we get the contracts from HUD or SAMHSA or anywhere else exactly what language is going to be used and what the requirements are going to be. But we do know that using Housing First language in a contract requiring that Housing First questionnaire, things of that nature, I don't believe that's going to fly.
In all my years doing this, I can't think of a time where someone didn't engage in services to get into housing. And even during housing, they've always engaged. They may not like what's being said to them or what's being asked of them, but they still engage. They still have conversation back and forth. You're not going to always be in alignment with what they're wanting, what you're wanting them, helping them to do. So I think it's just a semantics.
Right. Yeah. So removing that from contracts. I mean, going back to like Helen's idea of housing focused with rapid access to safe, stable housing and recovery and service engagement. Okay. And again, we're not going, so part of the issue has been we don't know what we don't know, and not wanting to be terribly reactive to where there are some areas that are still very gray, not sure. There are areas that are under or the legal review, the injunctions, but at least preparing enough to where we can, like, how do we move forward and maybe with the understanding, like what Kevin, what you're saying, of course, I mean, you can't force someone into treatment and it won't work. And there is relationship building. But where we're not like squashing our opportunities to get funded based on holding on to certain terms or maintaining things in contracts like that Housing First questionnaire moving forward.
Well, the only example that we have so far of what would this might look like was the NOFA builds that came out last month, which
And the SAMHSA.
yeah, and in that language, it not only did it say these things going forward, but it said that you have not had in the past any housing first, DEI, or any of these things. So the concern with the NOFA builds opportunity that came out was that it wasn't just looking about what you had going forward. It was saying that you've never had these things, even in the past. And so if the NOFO comes out and has similar language, all you can do is answer it how it's been. Amy.
Kevin, I'm wondering, I think I understand that we didn't go after the NOFO build. But if we, through the industry groups or other groups we belong to, could find out how that was asked in the NOFO, or if we have a copy of the NOFO, even if we didn't go after it, that may help us read the tea leaves a little bit more. But otherwise, I think we're all guessing
Right.
the best we can. And I guess what I'm wrestling with is HUD monitors you to your own programmatic guidelines. And so wherever we can be silent, I think silent is better than putting stringent barriers on our providers or things that we know are not trauma informed and are not best practice. But, again, not knowing how they're going to monitor it or what the questions were, it makes it a little difficult to make some decisions here today.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Amy. Well, I mean, we'll probably, we'll probably need to call a meeting that will be out of cycle. We discussed this at our last executive committee meeting. We're probably going to need to call a meeting if the NOFO does get dropped. That gives us a little bit more guidance and direction so that we can have some more discussions about this with more clarity.
Yes, because the first COC builds NOFO that dropped in 2024, we did go through the process and we didn't get any projects that applied. And then there were two others that followed that superseded the previous. And so it turns out that the people who had already had that project ready, those COCs, because you can only put forward one, they went ahead, some went ahead and applied. And it turns out, I just learned recently that there's a court case right now where there were awards that were announced, but not made known to the people who are awarded. But awards were chosen and then rescinded when this last NOFO builds came out with 7 days to turn around. And that's in court right now too. So, but yeah, it's basically 7 questions with 2-parters. And that was one, housing being, treatment and services being a precondition, and everything else that's in here, gender and sex being a binary choice only, which is now showing up in the UDE, the universal data elements that were just released by HUD recently. Those were big ones.
Helen has her hands up.
So I would just say, why don't we change the things that we know, right? We know we can't change, we have to do sex and gender. I know we're going to speak to the further implications of what that might look like and what reporting looks like. But if agencies are saying we can't report on that, then we can't require you all to report on it.
Correct.
We'll collect the data. So let's just change the things that we know. We know we can't do DEI. We know we can't use the words housing first, so change the things that we absolutely know. That's even with our dollars, they're local dollars, but I changed those knowing that agencies can't do this federally, and a lot of them are federally funded. And so if we change those things that we know, to Amy's point, we can come back once we have more information. It'll be a smaller change, maybe, but a little bit less for us to swallow. Fine with taking away the housing first. That's part of our social action funding. That won't be going forward. We're fine with that. And if we need to have something where we are as a community wrapping our heads around it, that housing first came from the HLA. So you can rewrite that to say whatever you want it to say, whatever we need as a community for it to say, to ask the questions to make sure we're all on the same page.
I agree with all
Well, it comes
this.
from the HLA and approved by the COC. So yeah, we're going to recommend removing the Housing First questionnaire. It's going to change our monitoring. It's going to change written standards, things of that nature, going through all of that and just rewording a bit.
April said, if worst case scenario happens and we lose or dramatically reduce funding, do local funders plan to increase funding, or will local funders require the same preconditions?
So Kevin, I'll jump in because I saw the question. We will have to require the same preconditions with our federal funds. And so that is what we're kind of working through on the legal side of whatever HUD puts down that we have to do with CDBG, ESG, those funding sources. You might see similar things with Helen's funding sources of social action funding. You may not. I think the big unknown is none of us have still received the Doge report. But I don't know how we would increase funding if we lose federal funding. We lost $1 billion of taxable revenue in the city of St. Pete after the storms this year, and we're looking at least a $20 million gap in the next fiscal year. And we have a governor who's talking about taking away property taxes. There's no source to refill that hole, right? And we should be worried about that for the Juvenile Welfare Board. We should be worried about that for PSTA. We should be worried about that for all of the entities who are on your tax bill, including the health centers and Pinellas County and others. So, I think we'll do whatever we can to support our providers because this is important to us. But I don't know of any realm of possibility, even if property taxes aren't taken away, that right now we could fill the hole of what all of our providers and the HLA receive in federal funds.
Yeah, and from the county, I would echo everything Amy just said. One thing that is, also I'll say being evaluated within the next month or so is our health program. So our board spends a significant amount of tax dollars on our Pinellas County Health Program, the Blue Card, even our healthcare for the homeless. It's supported by about $5 million of general revenue to make that program whole. That is being evaluated within the next few months to make recommendations on if it's continued or if it's scaled down. So we're in the process right now for discussing the negotiations with that firm to come and take a look at that. But that's a significant investment into the primary behavioral health, dental, specialty care, hospital care for that population. So I don't know that there will be increases. My department does not receive federal funding for the homeless services that we fund. But we haven't. So far, we haven't been asked to cut any of our funding. That going into this year, we've had to remain flat. But I'm pretty, I'll just say, concerned about the health program with the questions that have come our way.
Yeah.
And right now, that's 5,000 residents, about 3,000 of whom are homeless, experiencing homelessness. So it's a lot.
I will mention, I haven't even spoken to Mayor about this yet, but I've been talking to a group in Jacksonville that does healthcare for everyone that's uninsured in Jacksonville through a variety of different. It's a former ER doctor that created a platform. It's actually not that expensive. And so if there's dollars that can be cleaned up in cleanup, I may make a request for that, especially with the possibility of the subsidies going away from the Affordable Care Act. But that's not a done deal. It's just something we're exploring to see if there's any way we can help fill the gap for our uninsured residents that, depend on those resources from the Affordable Care Act.
This is Celeste. I just want to say thank you, Amy, for that because this is getting critical, as everyone has noted on the call. So we really appreciate your advocacy in that area. All right, I guess we can. Kathleen, did you want me to just read that, or are you?
Well, I just said, I mean, I think this is why, the HLA COC we need to get before the elected officials, whether it's a county commission meeting, a planning week meeting, the work session at St. Peter Clearwater, and kind of spell out these concerns that we have, as well as the successes we've had in our community and things that are working and what will be impacted. And we need to get on those agendas sooner rather than later. Because I know, and Karen and others, you start looking at those budgets in December, January, right? The different departments. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but.
No, that's correct. We usually have our budget kickoff early January with budgets due end of February.
Do you think, Karen, that, it would be better to meet with particular department heads or just give a 5 or 10-minute presentation before the commission during a work session or something? I mean, we can talk about that offline, but, we just need to know the best way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, typically from the county, the department heads or their reps are at this meeting. So I know Housing and Community Development couldn't attend because they're getting ready for the launch on Monday for some of the People's First Recovery Program. But typically we're here, or, and you're always welcome to get in front of the board. I share these updates with county admin after these meetings to make sure that Barry and the assistant county administrators are updated. So there's an awareness, and those are shared with the BCC during Barry's one-on-ones.
Okay, but it's not coming, I mean, just to be clear, so it's not coming directly from you. It goes from you to Barry to a commissioner. I just think.
Unless there's a specific ask where the departments do one-on-ones with commissioners, no.
Yeah, okay. Would this rise to the occasion of a one-on-one with commissioners?
That's up to Barry if he pushes that forward.
Okay.
And Kathleen, on our side, I would say, when I was on the COC board, I provided verbal reports to council. That doesn't happen anymore. So I don't know if they file reports. I haven't seen anything, but you could always, the second Thursday of every month is celebrations and, presentations from community interest groups. And you get 10 minutes. So you could always ask your representative for the city to put in a new business item for that. But anybody can request one-on-ones with council members. You don't need approval for that.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Same with BCC.
Yep. As long as they respond, but yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, I guess shifting back to our agenda, do we want to go back to the anticipated changes to permanent supportive housing? It's going to be similar to other contexts until we see it. We don't have any clear guidance on it. It's at this point, it's anticipated, it's speculated that, and I might have interpreted this language differently than you. I interpreted it, Sherry, as 30% of the total COC, your total COC money could not be more, there could not be, permanent supportive housing could not make up more than 30% of your total COC funding.
Yes.
Is that how you interpreted? Not that you had to reduce to that 30% of the total award, which for us is someone specify 6,200,000, 6.2 million, something like that.
Well, the total award was around 6.5 million, I believe.
6.5, okay.
Kevin, this is how we understood this, and we did share the COC's concerns and other groups we belong to about this. They asked for official language or policy stances that or sign-on letters that have been drafted. And so, you know, if the COC could come up with something like that, that was a follow-up request whenever we brought this to lobbyists at the request of the COC.
Okay, with the information I had shared, I had shared information with all the municipalities, and because we had discussion about that. I know April, as nonprofits, and at what point are we crossing the line? That was some of the question that we had, our concerns. But the COC should be able to make a policy statement for sure.
Well, it would be good to know what the gap of that would be. Part of it is also, what is HUD going to define as permanent supportive housing? Because sometimes there's even questions on that. You know, categorically in our projects, which ones are being categorized as PSH?
So do you think it's wise for Sherry, acting on behalf of the COC, to draft that policy statement or definition statement as how we understand it as a collective?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think we need to get that going. I think we'll probably want to review it, and
Sure.
yeah.
All right. Can you do that, Sherry?
Yes.
Great. Thanks.
Is it possible to find out what the gap would be? So if it was the 6.5 million and only 30% could go to PSH, what is that gap?
Okay, so that'd be 2 million total, and I can definitely get that right afterwards. Yeah. But I may be able to get it very quickly here.
Boley alone has over the 2 million. So, and then there's other PSH projects besides Boley.
No, Bully's the only PSH project. Yeah, the only provider for our COC is Bully.
We don't have any we don't have any other PSH?
Not PSH.
Wow.
No, rapid rehousing expansion, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and tiny homes, and the Solution Collaborative.
What is the tiny homes categorized as?
DV bonus project. DV
Kevin, the
bonus
tiny
project.
homes
Yeah.
should
What-
be TH North. Transitional housing would be
Okay.
the classification for it.
Transitional
Okay.
housing and rapid rehousing? Is that?
Yes.
So then the only question would be whether shelter plus care is factored into the PSH definition or not. Then it's a pretty straightforward number because you have ARC contracts and shelter plus care, and that's your gap, which I believe is probably around 350,000.
Very close, 388,000.
Pretty without any numbers in front of
No,
me. Pretty
330.
close.
Well, wait, I'm sorry. That was yeah, that was the actual award. That was the actual award, 388,000.
So Kevin, if shelter plus care doesn't get counted as PSH in some past NOFOs, I feel like there's been times that some projects have been switched over with partnership with housing authorities to become shelter plus care. Am I misremembering that? Is that any potential strategy that we should explore?
Um, I mean, I don't know how shelter plus care can really be categorized as PSH because there's no there's no services attached to that. So it's by that definition, it's not permanent supportive housing.
And there's actually two shelter plus care programs, right? So
Yeah, well,
yeah, so both of them together with for Bowley is 500, almost $509,000.
I'm just not sure what intervention that sits under and categorically with HUD. It's kind of one of those islands.
Well, and that's why I'm wondering if it's an island, is there, and we lose PSH funding.
Can we shift PSH, stuff some of PSH over to shelter plus care?
In some way using vouchers and then maybe then it's only the services gap. It's just something worth some
Yeah.
exploration because if it's only a services gap, that may be a little bit easier for us to find ways to fill it from other funding sources. Which makes no sense considering that their policy stance is that you have to require services.
Right. Exactly. So
But I
it's
mean, that
all
should be a part of the letter, right? The letter should state that, we're required to offer treatment and services, but that's exactly what PSH does.
I know. It's crazy. There's no education at the federal level on what these interventions truly are. Shelter plus care does require care as part of the voucher. They have to verify that the person is getting care, but it can be literally any kind of care. They just have to the tenant just has to show that they've gone to see a doctor or and the cost of those services are factored into the voucher. So but it's not necessarily behavioral health care or wraparound supports or anything related to their housing. But because it says shelter plus care on the surface, it sounds like treatment is a part of it. So it's sort of protected. I just don't know that we have the ability. I follow what you're saying, Amy. I just don't know if we have the ability to. I don't know that I can alter my PSH1, PSH2 grant. I can't just split it up. I don't think we have the authority to do that.
I just did a little calculating. If we were to, so the 30% of our last award would be 1.9 million. It's almost $2 million. And then if we were to remove shelter plus care and just do PSH straight up, it's 2.8 million is how much. So we're looking at like almost $1 million.
That's the gap. Just making
That's
sure I'm
the
following.
gap. Yeah, the gap is about $1 million. If shelter plus care is not included, it's under PSH.
And the other part we don't know is where are they putting overall general cuts to the COCs? Is there going to be reductions? If you are over the 30%, are you allowed to shift that money anywhere else? These are all the unknowns.
And where it's going is, of course, to ending, the focus is on ending street homelessness. And so street outreach, treatment, of course, and transitional housing is a big one. And so when we talk about priority interventions, we'll want to look at those as well.
So my natural question is, could I shift PSH to transitional housing? That's a complicated one. I don't. Yeah. That'll probably require conversations with like Florida Housing Finance.
This may be just, you may not know this yet, but could you, if you're not able to prioritize funding PSH, would you be able to prioritize rapid rehousing? And then local funders who fund that service could shift their funding to PSH.
So I don't know yet. What I do know just by reading what I hear and what seems very, very obvious, and what HUD has put out that they want to do a NOFO. They didn't state what kind of NOFO or anything like that, but that they were going to change it up and add transitional housing and street outreach to it. And so with transitional housing being the favored, and they promise guidance that they've never shared. They haven't followed up on. I have heard that if we don't have at least a transitional housing project to put forward during the next NOFO, that we can, it could be a big. This is rumor, but I've heard that we would not get any funding. I just want to throw that out there, just because that could be a. I think we should take that seriously.
To put a timeline on this for PSH, it would be January 31st and February 28th. That's when these contracts end with HUD of 26.
So so we're already in October and a NOFO hasn't dropped.
It wasn't supposed to drop this year. We weren't supposed to have the COC program NOFO. It was supposed to be renewed for the next year, and there's a lot of court cases around that, and this may end up turning in that direction. But that is, and there's a lot of advocacy around that too.
Right, but so
this was supposed to be a year for planning.
But we should be talking about this if Kevin's contracts end in January or February of 26, then it sounds like there's going to be a gap regardless of what happens with this PSH issue. Am I understanding that correctly, Kevin?
Well, I mean, we typically wait 3-4 months to get our contract from HUD every single year. We typically fund PSH for at least 4 months before we actually get a HUD contract, so we're kind of used to that. We're kind of used to getting our contracts in like May and June for January and February, which is, so, but we didn't think we would have another NOFO till 27 or till 27. Now they're saying that there is going to be a NOFO and here's the changes to it. And so if suddenly it gets cut to this, $2 million number, then yes, there's suddenly, as of January 31st and February 28th, almost $1 million shortfall.
Yeah, I mean, I know everybody floats for many months because HUD's always behind
Right.
contracts, right? And I knew that this was supposed to be a planning year, but they were going to renew contracts during that planning year. I think we need to be screaming from the rooftops that a NOFO hasn't dropped, right? I mean, people have to visualize that the thousands of people that you are caring for are going to be on their street. And if our elected officials do not understand that, and right now we have council chambers full of people worried about 200 people on the street. Let's be clear, 200 people on the street. And there could be many, many more than that. I just don't know that everybody is connecting the dots and understanding the urgency of the moment and why we need to be talking about this.
Yes.
And I'm preaching to the choir, so I mean, I'm just like, I don't think elected officials and policymakers are understanding that in January or February, a problem is on the horizon.
Yes. 300 to 400 people
Well,
that have been stably housed will no longer have housing.
It's also getting in the door, though, when we're talking about federal policies, because that has been tried. That has been very difficult. We have, and across COCs across the state of Florida, reached out to all of our legislative delegation and I mean, and the federal as well. And many COCs are being told by their Congress people, we're not interested. We're not meeting with you. That has been happening as well. So we send letters, but Helen?
I actually think Imani was before me.
Imani. Imani?
Oh no, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to make sure April gets her shout out in the chat. She is definitely lighting it up with yes, finally, yes, that's right. So she's in agreement. Earlier, she did say if HUD reduces the funding, we could do it instead of putting people on the streets. And I believe that was in agreement to what Sherry was mentioning earlier. But just wanted to put in that for April. Thank you.
And she was responding to Amy's, everybody should be
Yep.
screaming from the rooftop. That, yeah, just to be clear.
Thank you.
Helen.
So I was going to circle back to Karen's thought and just maybe throw this out there. So transitional housing, Karen's idea or thought about doing rapid rehousing, and you said transitional housing, but transitional housing is very close to rapid rehousing. And so if we reframe in our community what transitional housing looks like, it's up to 24 months, it's case management, job training, all of those things that we offer in rapid rehousing. Like, right, we say that a lot with our collab program, that while it is housing first, we can take away that language, right? But while it is housing first, there are still program requirements. You are required to meet with a case manager. You are required to earn income, do the things so that you can become stably housed. And ultimately, it's supposed to be where they move into independent housing. But if they take over the lease, they take over the lease. Like, I think if we kind of shape it that way, that's maybe where Karen might have been going with that thought. I don't know, but because we do fund rapid rehousing in our community. And so if we can't do PSH and we can do referee housing and now change that to transitional housing, what does that look like?
That is what I was saying, Helen, as far as kind of shifting the funds. We may have other opportunities too. So, Kevin, I can reach out to you offline to get kind of what that exact number looks like in January, to see internally what we can shift. Now, that doesn't answer, I think, April's question about increased funding. It's a shift in funding. But there may be options, at least within human services, that I could propose a shift to potentially help close the gap. But I think I just need to know really what that number is and if it starts in January. I'll just say there are procurements that we're planning for that we would stop and restart to have it look differently for our community.
Kathleen's hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So I think, going forward, so we had that exchange there of the interaction about, St. Pete has people showing up at their council, worried about 200 people on the street, and our elected officials aren't understanding the urgency of the moment or the potential. So, I mean, here's what I'm thinking is that Sherry and I can reach out to individual commissioners, council members for entitlement communities and ask for a one-on-one. But, quite frankly, we don't carry a whole lot of weight in those rooms. I mean, we've met with people one-on-one on onboarding and some different things. And so I think if people here who are the liaisons, the Karen and the and Amy, if you two also need to sit down with the electeds. I mean, it can't just be our 10-minute presentation. So I think it's just got to be all hands on deck.
And I'll piggyback on that with any chance to give a tour of a PSH project and let people lay eyes on that. Any decision makers that could be, and to try to dispel those myths, and then being like, especially congressional people are going to be elected on 2-year cycles. So you 200 people, you're going to have 700 people, or this. Look at all the people who are going to be impacted, who are. It's not always permanent. That's an unfortunate title, I think sometimes. It's supported housing, and the people who are in PSH units are contributing, that they are getting services, and that the cost of an ALF or a hospital bed or all those psychiatric hospital, all of that is going to be way more expensive than what PSH costs and less effective. Imani?
Hi, just coming back from the chat. April asked, what would human services stop doing to start doing this? And Karen was kind enough to answer. She posted, we have a few items that are currently in development for procurement, which would require board approval. One item is the rebrand of the CABI program, and this was being completely rewritten for direct services and could potentially shift. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Imani. And I just want to share, Janine Evoli has joined us.
Ideas, thoughts, or comments on this topic? David?
So a couple things we need to look at is, we don't have the answers today. We know that. But the one thing we do know is that tomorrow will not look like today did or what yesterday did. The elected officials at the federal level have indicated change. And the one thing we've seen over the last 10 months is when they indicate change, they implement change often rapidly and with radical force. we have to be prepared for that. I mean, part of this isn't that HUD might reduce our funding. It's that HUD may not have the funding themselves. The landscape is changing rapidly, and those are all things to consider. As providers, our only opportunity is to adapt to whatever comes our way at this point and survive, a few more years till things might come back to some sort of balance. But in the interim, adapting and choosing how we respond to these NOFAs or any other applications is really going to become a survival skill. And then being creative with how we implement what they're asking us to do.
Oh, Kevin, you have to get closer to your computer screen. No, that didn't work. Not very
Thank
much.
you, Mr. Conley. Dave, that was meaningful and yeah, it's a good summary of the challenges.
Well, and although feels like we didn't really achieve a lot today because we didn't have all the information we needed, I think we had or at least some early healthy conversations so that when we do need to make those changes soon, we're more prepared. Did that come across?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with my mic here.
And I want to echo what David said as well. So the information comes at rapid pace, and it starts out rumor. We share that, and then and try to make sense of it, and then anticipate that the next day it will change again. So I think we can anticipate having to call emergency meetings for if something comes down so that we can know that we're all on the same page. It's very difficult to plan for what we don't know at times. Some things we can though. We know that. I mean, housing change, getting rid of any reference to housing first, I think, as far as omitting it is what I'm saying. Omitting things that, I think Amy said something similar to this, just omitting language that may end up hurting providers or their chances is a good start. And then, of course, all the feedback we just got. Most of the rest, everything else has to do with what DSP, Data System Performance Committee, and HMIS is working with. And so I'll just add that gender is going to be another big one. It's no longer required. And there's been a lot of very good discussion around some of the unintended consequences because we have this conversation in the board meetings around COC board meetings and in committee meetings around retaining and continuing to collect local data. And the concern around that, and I want to share this, is so like for transgender folks, we have a very small population. In our PIT report in HMIS, very small population. In the PIT report, you can almost identify who the person is because it's just less than a handful every year for the past 10 years. And so when looking at data sharing and what may or may not, but has been discussed, has been shared in executive order, if that becomes a thing, and it was also in the COC bill to NOFO as well, that would be acceptable to share data with law enforcement. Just with the way things are going, making sure that we're not, with good intentions, putting people in harm's way. And so, the HLA's recommendation, as far as I see it, is to not continue to collect gender, to just stick with the HUD universal data elements for only, not because I like it, but only for the reason that it would, I think it places people at risk. If there ever was, anything down the line where somebody could get that data. And then, of course, HMIS governance would work on clarifying, making sure that we have really strong policies around the use of that data. I know Cindy, she says over my dead body. She's always said that. I trust her, but if we received a subpoena, we just need to make sure that HMIS governance will be handling that and making those proposals. And April said acceptable to share with law enforcement or required to share. And David says maybe housing focused or something similar can be the shift we need to adapt to emerging expectations. Like, housing first was once a radical new way of doing the work we do, and housing focus could be the next step in the evolution. And maybe we are the ones to help drive the change. And maybe make more sense to people too, because others don't understand what that is. So anything else on that? Because I'd like to talk about, there's something that would be the priority populations interventions. I know we recently went over this. I wasn't part of that, but priority populations interventions back in earlier this calendar year, and then was finally passed, for the final time in May by the COC board with the additional prevention that had accidentally been left out. I wanted to take a look at this, and this is typically the time of year that we do update this document. And since it was so recently updated, unless anyone thinks there needs to be major changes, I'm not recommending it. But I do want to look at a couple of areas here that I think could be problematic moving forward. And that is under priority populations. So vulnerabilities and risk factors. We have severe and persistent mental illness and substance use disorder. We know that those are going to be policy priorities with the current administration. Domestic violence will still be there. And length of time homeless will be, of course. So anything around ending street homelessness is going to be a policy priority for them. For priority populations, my concern is around the first bullet point. When we talk about DEI, disproportionately represented minority groups. And then the only other area that I would recommend is under priority interventions that we add street outreach, transitional housing. That we at least add transitional housing and maybe street outreach and possibly treatment.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Okay. So, and we'll need to be taking, well, I think this group needs to take action or make a motion around that, but we definitely need to talk about the under priority populations, disproportionately represented minority groups. I mean, maybe just taking out the word minority. I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
Kevin, your
I
microphone's
agree.
messing up with you again. No, still can't.
Still, no.
Yeah, I can't hear.
Sherry,
Yes.
I agree with that comment. Because I know when I was working on our HUD CDBG grants, I received guidance to still follow the regulation, but take out certain languages that might not be attractive. But making sure, even though it's in the regulation, just not putting it out there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I know disparity is one of those no words. Sometimes it goes back in and out of favor. But I would think disproportionately represented would be fine.
So April has moved. She's so moved when you asked for a motion, I believe. And Kevin, we still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to jump in and say that we had a motion from April to, and I'm going to paraphrase it, that we change our priority populations to disproportionately represented groups, and that we add street outreach and transitional housing to our priority interventions.
I'll make a motion for what Kevin just said.
All right.
I'll second it. Michael Gelazzo.
All right. Any discussion?
So April moved, and then who's the second?
Yeah,
I guess I can.
April.
I
April really,
seconded
April,
online and then someone else moved and then I seconded vocally. So I can withdraw my second if I need to.
all right.
Whoever
April's
needs to be
motion
there.
So if I
and
can
Judith's
assist
second.
on this, I would go with when Kevin repeated what the motion would be to, then Judith would be the motion to approve and Michael Gelazzo seconded.
All in favor, please say aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Oh,
I'm
I
sorry.
think there's a
Aye.
hand up.
Okay.
Before we vote, I just want to be clear. Because we use, and I know other funders use these priority populations to send to HUD. We use these for our plans. Is that word disproportionate going to get kicked back? Like, are we just stepping on our own toes here, trying to keep that group? Is that going to get kicked back? And should it just be taken out? I just want to be understanding about this and recognizing that this is also used for social action funding. You know, so this touches us in a lot of ways, not just for federal, but it's also for our local stuff and what that might mean to the agency. So although it is something that is near and dear to me, I get it, and we worked really hard on this, but I just want to be clear, if we keep this in here, we can pretty up the wording however we want to, but if we keep disproportionate in there at all or anything in this line, then we know that that's going to get kicked back.
Okay, so we've moved this into discussion, and I hear your concerns, Helen. Do we have any recommendations on a reframe of this, or are we talking about removing it altogether?
What I heard Sherry say was taking it out or maybe reframing it. I'm worried that if we're just reframing it to say disproportionate represented population or anything like that, anything that says disproportionate is saying that we are putting together one specific group and we are focusing in on that. Is that going to lend itself to DEI? Or I see April says with a focus on chronically homeless, however we want to do that. I don't know, but I'm just saying if we say that we're narrowing this down to one group of individuals, how is that going to look the same as DEI? We're just saying it in a different way.
We've already got chronically homeless is already one of the priority populations. There is I think a recommendation in the chat for 30% AMI. Is that how I'm understanding this? Who said that? Dana?
I was thinking like definitely remove the minority and stick to like what the population guidelines is. So if someone's usually homeless, I just threw 30% because I know with certain grants, it's got to be 30% and below. So if that's what we're following, like if you're within a certain income limit, maybe we're like, homeless people that are definition of what homeless is, and just stick to that and not focus so much on whether they're minorities, whether they're you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I would just kind of.
That's what's used in all of my housing applications for Florida Housing Finance.
The 30% below.
Mm-hmm.
Helen, do you have a thought on that?
I think that's what is asked for, and we can't say one way or another where they will go with the percentage, but I agree with Kevin. That's pretty much what we look at, the AMI. I was kind of saying take the whole line away if we, like, no reason to pretty it up, or do we need another priority population besides the ones that we have there, which quite frankly encompasses everybody. Veterans, families with minor children, older adults, chronically homeless, youth, that's everybody.
Yeah.
What I can say related to this regarding chronic homelessness is that in permanent supportive housing, we are overrepresented in minorities in permanent supportive housing because of our focus on chronically homeless and 30% AMI. So that I can speak to for PSH and Safe Haven only. Well, we're still in discussion, so someone's gonna, need to make an amendment or, reverse this back
James
so we can.
Dunbar had a comment about Amy mentioned this earlier and Helen now, sometimes less is more. Yeah.
May I ask, and I know we talked about this a lot, Kevin, in April. This is our priority populations are in order, priority order. They're in ranked order. And so
Yeah, I was going to suggest that as well.
if we move chronically homeless up, take out disproportionately represented minority groups, keep veterans, families, like keep them in that way, but make sure that we put that emphasis on chronically homeless households, then that gets to April's point about the focus on chronically homeless individuals. We're keeping emergency shelters in there, which is a focus in transitional housing on the priority interventions. So then we're just eliminating that and encompass in all of those groups. We have a disproportionate amount of minority individuals represented in our system in general, right? And so are they going to be touched already without us putting it here is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to try and summarize your recommendation for a friendly amendment to remove disproportionately represented minority groups from the top line, replace that by moving chronically homeless households up to the top line, and then also retain the street outreach and transitional housing intervention, adding that. And so, is that correct, Helen?
Yes.
Judith, do you accept that amendment?
I do accept that amendment and I'll remotion.
And I'll re-second.
Sorry, Mike.
Sorry.
All right.
So good.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Sorry. As an outsider, first time seeing this and representing Christine Long with Metropolitan Ministries, this is semantics or formatting. If it's truly a ranked order, is a bullet the best option versus a number? This is our number one priority, our number two priority. Because first time seeing this, I could read that as we're looking at all these things equally.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know that we've ever truly used it as a rank order. I think that we've used it that these are all priority populations and that, some funding drives decisions differently than others, I can't speak for the city or Karen from the county, but I don't know that our intentions was to rank it in order.
I have a question. Is your priority population your way of describing preferences and method of prioritizing?
Our method was to start with so these are all inclusive. So when you start at the top, so the priority populations also include the vulnerabilities or risk factors at the top. So that's why they're first. So it is all of those groups, but then those groups that have life-threatening health conditions, accessibility conditions, severe and persistent mental illness, domestic violence, risk of harm and exploitation, and length of time homelessness. So they all kind of We have changed this process like a number of times over the years because it's been one of those things where it's been really hard to come to full agreement because it's hard to determine who's more important than another when we all kind of agree that they're others. So we've tried to allow our data to drive our decisions. And so that's ultimately how we ended up with these things is that these populations were seen in our data and our homeless numbers, and we knew that we needed to make some improvements in their numbers. And then the veteran category was on there because the VA really requires it to be in our priority populations to be eligible for any of their funding.
And I want to add, I was just going to say, I'm a bit newer. And so I had that same question come up and had asked around as well. And my understanding is what April just said, that for years it was in ranked order and then changed it to say that all these groups are equally important. So my understanding was that this is not a ranked order.
No.
I have, okay, maybe because what about, I have a suggestion. You guys can think about it. So you know how like home ARP has the QP population and they put the preference? What if we just take their definitions for homelessness qualifying population and use that, and maybe it'll be perceived like, do you guys know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm saying it correctly or accurately, but kind of like, for example, let me see. I'm trying to think back. What is it? The definitions for home ARP, the QP population is, what is it? Like at risk of homelessness, at risk of homelessness is like a whole list. Domestic violence shelter. So you kind of already put in the vulnerable and at risk of factors, but maybe on the second part, you can list out of all these population, you list their order of prioritizing. I don't know, just a suggestion. Am I making sense?
You're making sense, but I would go back to what Kevin said, is we've done this so many different ways over the years, and we have always healthy, good fights and good discussions about it. I don't want that to get lost because it's not like we just sort of kind of came up with it. We've really spent a lot of time on this every year.
Yeah, we've never really come up with a systematic way to take these populations and truly rank order them. And sometimes funding that comes available doesn't fit into that category anyway, and you've got to take the opportunity for funding when it comes, and it may not be the top one, it may be the second one or the third one that funding is for. So I really wouldn't want to go back and alter this. We've spent an extensive amount of time on this. I think the focus of the modification or change today is to realign it with concerns with new language requirements and being mindful of that as the NOFA is getting ready to come forward.
Yeah, my intent was not to stop the vote that was about to happen, but more so there was mentioned that, well, maybe that first one disproportionately we modify the language and we move it down. Me looking at it, moving it down doesn't really mean anything because it just with bullets, they're all equally as important.
I think just visually, when something's at the top, whether it's rank ordered or not, it stands out. And chronic homelessness is an importance and a priority. and shifting it to the top does make sense given
Agreed.
the efforts coming forward as it relates to street outreach and getting people immediately off the streets. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, we got a combination of chat ayes and verbal ayes. Any nays? Thank you. Motion passed. Thank you very much, everyone. All right. Where's the agenda back? Did we cover everything, Sherry?
I did. We're in public comment till the end.
All right. A little bit on time. So any public comment, good news that anyone would like to share?
I would just like to say I thank both Kevin and Sherry for their leadership on this call. I know this was not easy information to process and to get consensus on.
Thank you, everyone, for the healthy conversation. And hopefully we'll have some clarity sooner rather than later. Any other public comments?
I do want to share some news from the HLA and just any misconceptions that may be out there right now. I've reached out to Mickey Thompson with First Contact. When I get back, I hope to meet with her. But just to clarify, HLA does still staff the homeless hotline right now. It looks a little different in the sense that we have staff that we were already putting on it are still working that hotline. So anyone who needs information or referral, the form still exists on the website. And the only thing that has changed with the process is that we don't have as much access to direct client financial assistance. And so we're just very clear about that. So that was the only thing that was changed, was the type of financial assistance we could supply, but we still do information and referrals. So I wanted to share that. We're keeping a pulse on it to see how it goes. And of course, I want to talk to Mickey in the near future and anyone else about any concerns that may exist. Just reach out and we can talk about it. But so far, we have been still maintaining just fine.
Thank you for that clarification. Anyone else? All right, hearing nothing, you'll get 12 minutes of your day back to move for your weekend. I wish everyone a great weekend, and we'll see you all real soon.
Thank
you, Kevin.
Good job.
Take care.